And good evening. How's everyone doing? Um, Tonight's webinar series, or webinar, is on astrology and numerology, basically helping you to further unlock your natural gifts. But the cool thing about astrology and numerology is that they help to awaken insights about you. And that's actually how I got started in all this spirituality stuff. Even though I was born with some real cool gifts and had a lot of experiences when I was younger, I really didn't understand spirituality until I started studying astrology and then eventually numerology. Numerology is a lot easier, by the way. So let's just jump right into it, okay? Astrology. Astrology is really cool because it helps you to understand you. And the way it does that is because, well, first off, these are metaphysical sciences. So they've been around for a long time, and they're what the three wise men were. A lot of Christians believe that the wise men were astronomers, but just so you know, back then all astronomers were astrologers. They didn't have telescopes to look at the stars, and they sought meaning and understanding in the stars and the influences of them in life. That's why they were considered wise men, not stargazers. So numerology helps you to understand who you are by giving you understanding frequencies, because numerology is all about frequencies and astrology is all about symbols and their influence. So we'll go deeper into all of this. Okay. The cool thing about astrology and numerology is it helps us to understand the relationship between all things and all forces of creation. So astrology is basically how planetary bodies and cosmic influences impact us in our daily life from the moment we're born. And your individual chart basically says who you are at the moment of birth. So the reason it works is because at the moment of birth, if you take a look at all of the energy that comes across the solar system, it comes from outside the solar system, and this is light. And spiritual teachings say that there are 144,000 rays of creation, but it really doesn't. That's an arbitrary number that we really don't need to worry about right now. But light comes to us from everywhere, and it comes to us through the surrounding energy fields around us. And a lot of those energy fields are known as constellations. So like the constellation of Sagittarius or the constellation of Pisces or the constellation of Cancer. And that's what's known as the astrological belt or the serpent's belt or the cosmological serpent. And as the energy comes to us through the galaxy, it gets flavored or colored or influenced by the energy of the planets and the suns in those constellations. And then as it continues to come closer to Earth, it gets flavored by the planets, the gravitational forces of the planets. So as it goes by those planets, it picks up the energy of the planets. Much like water picks up the energy of everything it goes by in a stream, light does the same thing, except it's on a very, very less dense level or lighter level. Not trying to create a pun here. So what happens is all those lights come together, and and at the moment of birth, all that light comes together, and there's a small flash of light that happens within you, which is you at the moment of birth. As you step from the spiritual dimensions and fully engage your consciousness into your mortal flesh or physical flesh. And since the cool thing about astrology is this, guys, every 4 minutes, a planet changes a degree. Not all planets, but the moon, it moves the fastest, but all planets are changing degrees. And so every 4 minutes, there's another change. And then the location on the planet also changes the angle at which light comes to you. So if you go like 25 miles or even 50 miles, the degree of the influence is also changed. So because the light is changed from location to location by every 4 minutes or every few miles, that means that when you're born, even if you're born in a hospital where 50 babies are being born that day, no two people are born at the exact same moment in time. And so everyone's chart is slightly different. And also how you interpret, how you express your chart is also unique to you. And that we'll talk about that a little bit later. And that's what's really cool. That's one cool thing about astrology. So because every birth chart is unique, it says you are also unique. Now, the way it works is each of the, just to break it down, there are 12 signs of astrology. There are 12 signs or 10 planets or 10 aspects, or 10 bodies actually, and then 12 houses. And so we're just going to go through those really quickly just so you have a basic understanding. And then I'm going to encourage you to pursue your own astrology, and we'll teach you how to do that a little bit, and your own numerology. But we're going to give you a little bit of information tonight about why this is so important for you and what it can mean to you tonight. So these are the signs. We just started with January because it's easy to go. So we'll start off with Capricorn, and this is just a very general expression of each sign. So if you know what your sign is, everyone assumes their sign is according to the day they were born. If your sign is Capricorn, then you tend to be very productive, and you love having new things. You love buying new things, getting new clothes, that kind of stuff, or houses, cars. Anything new is fun and exciting. But more importantly, productivity is your main calling. Also, Capricorns tend to be, I call them little powerhouses because they, as a rule, they aren't very big or tall people. They tend to be shorter in height, and generally skinnier, but they're like really physically strong for their size. Aquarius tends to be tall, but they're also very friendly and independent. Pisces are like middle of the road. I'm a Pisces, so I'm 5'9". Pisces are sensitive and compassionate. That's me. I said Aquarius was friendly and independent. Marcy was asking me to repeat that. So the cool thing about Aquarius, I think Aquarius is one of the most unique of the signs. Independent, but Aquarius loves to be everybody's friends. But the Aquarius people tend to, while they're everybody's friends, they tend to like make decisions for themselves. They like to be unique in the way they work within the world, and that's that independent thing. They like to stand out in the crowd, not because actually Aquarius stands out in the crowd, not because they like to stand out in the crowd, but just because that's who they are. Okay. Pisces are warm and sensitive. Pisces also loves to hang out with close friends, but not necessarily a lot of people. Pisces don't normally like big crowds. Close buddies, close pals, close friends, that's what they like. Aries loves crowds, but they love playing. They love us being assertive. When they say childlike, it's because they're always like children are always active, always playful, always outgoing, and that's the classic Aries. They are very, very assertive people, very strong. They're the first to charge in if there's anything needing help or support or something needs to be done. They're the kind of person that jumps in and just goes for it. Taurus. My mom's a Taurus. So is my younger brother. Taurus are very strong-willed people. They're also very pragmatic, very practical. They're not quick to change their minds. And when they make it, if you have a friend that's a Taurus, they'll probably be your friend for the rest of your life. That's the kind of nature of a Taurus. Once they make up their mind about something, that's just the way they are. They're not trying to prove anything. It's just who they are, and it's pretty cool. Geminis, on the other hand, usually have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of friends, and then some more friends after that. They're very playful. They're very creative. They're kind of like butterflies. They will jump from friend to friend. Although they may have a lifelong friend, they tend to have circles of friends that they gravitate to at different periods of the month or the year, depending upon what's going on. That's just because they love a lot of stimulus, a lot of activity. They're very creative. Often Geminis are very good writers. And they're good at communication. They tend to talk very quickly. Gemini is a classic person that can carry on 6 conversations at once with 6 different people, or 5 different people. Cancer is probably the most nurturing of all the signs. They're the mommy of astrology. They are the homemaker. They're the caretaker. They're the kind of person that just, besides being the homebody, they love to nurture and be romantic. Not as romantic as Libra. Libra is the most romantic, but Cancers love having that safe, warm home environment. Leos, the lion. Yeah, they are the most outgoing of the astrological signs. They tend to be known as natural-born leaders. They love taking charge. They tend to be very confident and very assertive. Often have red hair or big hair, and that's not just by chance. They don't always have to have red hair, but they often have, their hair is important to them. It's a lion's main thing. I'm obviously not a Leo. I'm losing my hair. Virgo. Virgo's a purist. Virgo the Virgin. Virgo's a purist. The big thing about Virgo is they love things to be nice and neat and orderly. It's sometimes difficult for a Virgo to change direction because they're used to having things set in the way that they are comfortable. So to change direction is stepping them out of their comfort zone, and they like that structure, they like that order. So they're very good at maintaining and going along with the flow. And if they're in charge of the change, it's really easy for them to change. But as a whole, it's harder for them to jump on a change unless they have a lot of air sign with them. Virgo tends to be very strong, a very confident sign. They are also lifelong friends type people. Libras. Libras are creative. They are known for their musical arts, their drawings and their paintings. If you take a look at people in the arts, they're almost all of them, especially when it comes to do with visually or auditorily creative. That's most likely a Libra. They often have long, skinny fingers, artistic fingers. That's another thing I studied was a little bit of palmistry. What I like about Libras is they are all about balance and fairness, and they make the very best of judges because they don't tend to fall into agendas unless that agenda is about what's fair, and they're easy to change their opinion about something if they recognize that the higher or new opinion is more fair or more in balance or more what's best for the whole. They tend to be very, very good at that. And by the way, Libras are of all the astrological signs, everyone will probably vote Libra as Mr. or Mrs. Congeniality. They're the ones that everyone loves to hang out with. They're pretty cool. Also, but the downside of Libra is they tend to take on too many projects, so they may feel overwhelmed because they get scattered by doing too many things at once. So, but otherwise, other than that, they're great. Scorpios. Scorpios are probably the most assertive, the most confident, the most dominant of all the astrological signs. They tend to be a little secretive, and that's because they don't like sharing information with people that they don't trust. Once you gain a Scorpio's trust, you pretty much have it for life. They're that kind of people where where loyalty is probably one of the most important things for them. So they don't give their loyalty freely, but once they have it, you have it for life. They are also naturally psychic, like they have the gut instinct. Most Scorpios can read the nature or the energy of a person and know if they're going to trust them or not trust them right off the bat. That's that first impression thing. Scorpios are really, really, really fixed on that. On a side note, Scorpios generally have really good eyesight. Not all, but generally they do. One of the signs for Scorpio is known as the eagle, and so Scorpios are known to have eagle eyes. Okay. Sagittarius. Sagittarius is your natural philosopher. It's considered the sign of the highest spiritual, mental understanding of all the astrological signs. While Pisces is considered to be the most evolved of all the signs emotionally, Sagittarius is considered to be the most evolved mentally. So Sagittarius are natural philosophers, and they love business. They love negotiation because it requires them to interact with people and work with people. And since they generally are aware of other people's motivations, they find themselves naturally good at finding common ground or finding a way to get their position understood. So they make natural, good business people. So those are the basic understandings of the signs. After the signs, then we're going to address the elements, because each sign is associated with an element. This way you kind of know where you fall in the 4 elements. And in the last class, we talked about the 4 elements and how it was important to balance those elements. So if you keep those, if you know where you are in balance or where you're strong, you know how to maintain balance. So the 4 signs are fire, air, water, and earth. So for earth, there's Capricorn, Virgo, and Taurus. For air, there's Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. For water, there's Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. And for fire, there's Aries, Sagittarius, and Leo. So those are the natural signs. And they also relate to aspects of the individual. So like the elements of the sign some are known as fixed, some are known as cardinal, and some are known as mutable. So the fixed signs are the ones that are more likely to hold on to their belief structure, where the mutable signs are more readily fluent and flowing in their nature, and the cardinals like in between. So when you're dealing with a fixed energy, that person generally is slow to change their mind or slow to change their position. And the denser the element, the more likely that's the case. So for example, in fire, Leo is a fixed sign. In earth, Taurus is a fixed sign. So Leos and Taurus generally don't get along because they're both very slow to change their position. But of the two, Leo is more likely to change because it's a fire element, and fire tends to move faster than earth. That doesn't mean one is more right than the other. It just means that they hold on to their belief structures because they're comfortable in those belief structures until they really, really comprehend that an expanded or a different belief structure is beneficial for them. And then even then, they have to get comfortable in their own physical body for that new vibration before they can actually make a full transition, where the mutable signs are more likely to just shift and flow very quickly. And of course, as I said, air signs also shift and flow more than the earth signs. So the fixed signs are, for earth, Taurus; for air, Aquarius; for water, Scorpio; and for fire, Leo. The mutable, which is the most flowing, are for earth, Virgo; for air, Gemini; for Pisces, water's Pisces; and for fire is Sagittarius. So then the other signs are the cardinal, which is like in between. So I'll just say that for the benefit. Capricorn is cardinal, Libra is cardinal, Cancer is cardinal, and Aries is cardinal. Okay? So one thing about your sign, because in the beginning I said, what's your sign? You don't just have a sign, you have multiple planetary influences. So you have multiple signs. And when most people say, what's my sign, or what is your sign, they're actually talking about what's your sun sign. So it's where your sun was when you were born. And this is what most people associate with their sign. So if someone would ask me what's my sign, I'd say I'm a Pisces. And that's the mainstream, easy answer. But in reality, I'm Pisces, Virgo, rising, moon, and Cancer. those are the three biggies that define the foundation for what most people are aware of when they interact with people. So the sun, the ascendant, and the moon are the three most common aspects that people look at that define the base personality and how the world sees them. But there's other planets as well. And those other planets are broken down into two categories of personal planets and non-personal planets, or worldly planets. And so we're going to address those as well, because the personal planets help us to understand our relationships, and the worldly planets helps us understand our life. And that's why it's really cool to have. So knowing how they impact you on a personal level is done by looking at your chart. And the more you have an understanding of your chart, the more you have an understanding of yourself. When I talk to people about astrology, one of the first things I try to tell them is that when I first started studying astrology, I looked at my chart and I had this aspect that said I was argumentative. And I read that and said, I'm not argumentative. And I read another aspect that says, I'm very argumentative and I rebel against authority. It says, I'm not argumentative. I don't believe in authority. I believe I'm in charge of my life. And then I read another book and it said I was argumentative. And I was like, I'm not argumentative. And then I realized I was arguing with the book 3 different times, rebelling against the authority of the book. And I realized I'm a little dense sometimes. So, that's when I realized, well, maybe I'm a little argumentative. Okay, maybe I'm a little more than a little argumentative. And hopefully I've grown up a little bit and shifted out of this negative influence that my chart was showing me that I had at birth. Not that I have it today. I believe I have it to a far lesser degree today than I've ever had it, and I'm still evolving. But without me reading that I had this negative trait as an influence within my birth chart, which is like how I came into being born, it's like that was the basis of my soul at the moment of birth. And so the study of astrology helped me to recognize what my shadows were that I wasn't seeing. One of the classic things I love to say in some of my classes, especially my healing classes, is the biggest secret in the world is that everybody knows your problem, but you don't know what your problem is. Just like all the negative stuff your friends do, but they don't necessarily realize that they're doing those things. So the secret is everyone knows your problem, but you don't know your problem. So so the secret is you are keeping your problems from your consciousness. So astrology helps to bring those little nuances, even the minor ones, to your consciousness. And that way, when you actually recognize it, you can see, without criticism, you can see how you're doing this and how that's impacting your life in multiple areas of your life. And then once you can see that, it's really easy to just make a little shift. I try to put it in context to a guy going like speech therapy, a public speaker. Like I just said, a lot of people when they talking or give speeches, they use a crutch, a word like or aw or something along those lines, and or an expletive, and all that is a pause for the brain to pick up information so they can say the next word that they're planning on saying. Now, a lot of people don't even know they're doing that. But if they were to videotape themselves or have someone videotape them and replay that videotape and catch themselves using that crutch, that tends to change their perception of their ability to speak. And because they're aware that they're doing it, there's on a conscious level, their subconscious mind stops doing it. And then they quit using that as a crutch. And they become a far better speaker. And it usually only takes 1 or 2 times. But a lot of times, if you're not aware of it, you're not even aware that you're doing it, then it's hard to make that change. So, I'm sorry, I read that. Okay? So, Marcy wanted me to read the slide, but I think I already did. So let's go on to the planets. Personal planets represents your base personality. They represent the sun and moon, something called your rising or ascendant, which is basically the sign on your first house cusp. and then your Mercury, where Venus and Mars are. So all these are wherever they are, what sign they're in at the moment of birth. Also, eventually, if you go really deep in astrology, the degrees matter. So it gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. But we're really actually just covering on a basic level. I know this feels like a lot, but when you get to it, it's really pretty easy. Worldly planets directly impact your life path and how you interact with the world, world purpose, that kind of stuff. Okay? So, personal planets. The sun sign. The sun shines its light upon the world, and because of it, we humans have a great life. We eat food because of the sun. We stay warm because of the sun. We can go skiing when the sun cools off a little bit in the winter, or skiing when the sun comes up, and we can go on lakes. There's other things that we can do, but the sun is basically the life giver. And where your sun is at the moment of birth is how you present your life. So the sun is how you see yourself shining in the world. So where your sun is at the moment of birth is how you view yourself. So whatever sign is in. So if go back to the previous slides about the Aquarius. The Aquarius tends to be very giving, very friendly, unique dresser, and the kind of person that's a friend to everybody. So if your sun's an Aquarius, then you see yourself as the kind of person that's friendly, independent, confident, doing your own thing. Okay? So wherever your sun is determines how you express yourself. So the next one is the moon. So the moon is your emotions. It's how you process your emotions. It's how you express your emotions. If you have a moon in an air sign, you tend to get over your emotional stuff very quickly. If your moon is in a fire sign, you tend to be very passionate about your emotions. If your moon's in a water sign, you tend to be very watery, being very emotional. If your moon is in an earth sign, you tend to be very set in your emotions. Like that's the way you feel, and that's just the way you feel, and that's just who you are. So it's how you process it, but it's also how you connect to the energy of Earth, Mother Gaia. Oh, by the way, the sun's how we connect to Father as well. So understanding your moon is about how you express your emotions, or also how you process your emotions as well. Okay? Ascendant is pretty cool. It's probably one of my favorite things that I learned about when I learned about astrology, because it represents something totally different from the sun, unless they're actually in the same sign. The ascendant is how the world sees us. So we think that we are the sun shining in the world through our sign, and we think everyone sees us that way. But what everyone sees is our ascendant. Now, the ascendant is the sign, the constellation that's on the eastern horizon at the time of your birth. So if your sun was born, if you were born, at sunrise, then the sun and the ascendant would be the same sign. And that means you would see yourself and the world would see you identically. But for most people, this isn't true. For most people, they have a sun sign and they have a different ascendant. And the ascendant is considered in astrological terms as the refined expression of you. It is the energy that you've already dealt with, that you've already lived through, that you've already processed, and that you have, in a sense, mastered that sign to a high degree, and therefore now you're living as an embodiment of that sign. So it's a softer expression of that sign. So like someone with a sun sign in Aries would be very aggressive, very playful, but also very childlike. So that means they could throw tantrums and stuff. But if they didn't have the sun in Aries, but they had the ascendant of Aries, they would throw less tantrums. They would be more assertive, more confident, and still charge into things. But they wouldn't be the child wouldn't have the negative aspects of the Aries as much. So I hope that makes sense. Okay. Mercury. Mercury is your mind. It spins around the sun so fast that our mind represents how much we think. And because the Mercury spins so fast, we think so fast. Whatever sign Mercury is in determines the strength of our intelligence. So Mercury in an air sign tends to be, since air is about communication, Mercury in an air sign tends to be the highest intelligence. Mercury in a fire sign means that we think so fast that we may jump to conclusions. Mercury in a water sign means our thoughts may be a little slowed by water, but it will still flow. And then Mercury in an earth sign means that once we make up our mind, that's just the way we think. So, but Mercury in an air sign, just even though I said it tends to be the highest, it's not always the highest. This is just a tendency. Mercury in an air sign can be so fast that we change our mind too many times, change our thoughts too much as well. So there's strengths and weaknesses to all of this. But Mercury is basically our intellect, or the way we think, our intelligence. Okay? Venus is pretty cool. Venus and Mars is pretty cool, especially for relationships, because it's all men are from Mars and women are from Venus, and women are always right. So Venus and Mars both represent the feminine and masculine energy. So they kind of do the same thing, but with slightly different tendencies. The Venus energy is represents the feminine energy we are drawn to. So a woman, wherever your Venus is how you try to express love and how you view love and what you consider to be love. And for a man, where his Venus is the kind of woman he's drawn to, either a fire sign or air sign or water sign or earth sign, whatever Venus sign Venus falls into, or the actual sign itself. So, for example, my Venus is in Aries. So because Venus is in Aries means that I look at love as passionate and playful. And of course, Marcy is Aries rising. So that means as the world sees Marcy, the world sees Marcy as an Aries physical person. So it's natural that I would be attracted to Marcy because she's a Aries rising, and my Venus is in Aries. And that's normally the way it plays out. Now, if Marcy wasn't Aries rising, most likely then it would fall into a fire sign. So she would have a strong fire sign somewhere, and of course her sun's in Sagittarius. So that means my Aries is attracted to the fire energy of her sun, and that's also the way it works. Okay. Masculine energy of Mars is the same thing, but for a man is how a man expresses love, and for a woman it's what they're attracted to. So it's actually the same thing. Just played out, from the male energy versus the female energy. Now, the other side of this is Venus is also how we're able to receive as well, because Venus is about receptivity, it's about the feminine, it's about the creativity. So it's not just the perception of romantic love. Venus is also about how we can receive love, and Mars is how we engage in the physical world. So for a woman with Mars, let's say, if it was like this has nothing to do with, let me step back. Let's take a look at homosexual couples, because you would think that this doesn't work in homosexual couples, but it totally works in homosexual couples, because in one is more masculine and one is more feminine, but at the same time, if you take a look at the Martian energy, it's all about engaging in the physical world. It's about masculine energy. It's about how we are active in the world. And feminine energy is about how we're receptive. So it really doesn't matter what your preference is in relationships. It's just the expression of you in life and what you personally are attracted to or drawn to in physical life. Okay, so now we're going to jump to the outwardly, or the non-personal planets, or the worldly planets. Jupiter is a planet of prosperity and abundance. It's actually an amplifier. It's the biggest planet in our solar system, and it's an amplifier. So it's called the planet of benevolence. And so wherever it sits, it brings in peace or a magnifying effect in that area where it sits. That's what's one thing cool about Jupiter. It just amplifies. It's like a multiplier. Saturn, now Saturn is probably the planet most people don't like. Uh, Saturn is the life teacher. It's the one that teaches us what works and what doesn't work, what we want to hold on to, what we don't want to hold on to. Some of us like the school of hard knocks. Some of us like to just make changes very, very, very quickly. Whatever sign it's in determines how you process difficulty or challenges in your life and how you choose to evolve in your life. What's the quickest way you grow and how you respond to the life lessons. So if your Saturn is in a mutable sign, you're going to change really quickly. If it's in a fixed sign, you're going to change slower. If it's in a fire sign, you're going to change faster than if it's in an earth sign. So you have to weigh all these things into factor and realize that this is an influence at birth. It doesn't mean you're stuck here forever. So Uranus is the planet of utopia. It's the planet of Shambhala. It's the planet of Shangri-La. It's the planet that says we can all live together as one happy family in harmony with each other and nature and in balance in the world. It is the higher octave of Mercury, so therefore it represents higher intellect. And the cool thing about Uranus, if anytime Uranus and Mercury interact, it brings about intelligence of a grand or higher level, genius level intelligence. Cool thing about Uranus is it's always for what makes the world and all humankind better. So it's considered the planet for altruistic people. The final planets, Neptune and Pluto. Marcy told me a little acronym to remember how these planets go in sequence. What was that, Marcy? My very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas. And that's not the number 9, that's 9, N-I-N-E. So my very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas. And that's an acronym. You take the first letter and tells you how the planets go in sequence in the solar system. I'm sorry, I just had to throw that in there because I had never heard that before today. You guys may have heard that. Neptune is known as the psychic network planet. Wherever it sits in your chart, it increases your natural psychic influence in that area of your life, and then whatever sign it sits in determines how you interpret that psychic ability. So, for example, my Neptune is sitting in the sign of Scorpio, and Scorpio is one of the most psychic of all the astrological signs, and Neptune is a planet for psychics. So Scorpio is visual, but it's also like super strong gut feelings. So Neptune and Scorpio makes a person naturally sensitive or psychic, provided that they actually hone that skills. And then where it sits in the houses, which we'll be talking about shortly, determines the best influence for that. Okay? The good thing about Neptune is it helps us to connect to spirituality, our guides, and be able to connect to our higher self, and better able to have that higher self influence in our life. And the way we utilize that is by recognizing that sign and working within the sign, the energy of the sign, and Neptune itself. Pluto. Pluto is the coldest, darkest, most intense planet in the solar system. They consider it a ball of ice now, no longer considered a planet. I still think it's incredibly powerful. Because it's a ball of ice, it's considered to be emotionless. The environment is considered to be rather intense. It rules the insect kingdom. It is the ruler of Scorpio. And it is considered to be, as raw power or raw force, considered to be the most powerful for pure, raw, assertive energy than all the other planets combined. So it's not necessarily the most powerful planet, but for raw power, for assertion, for taking your desire and pushing it into the world. Pluto is what changes the world by generations. Marcy and I were just talking about how the world is changing generationally. Like every 20 years, the world seems to gradually change with a new shift of consciousness. And that's because as Pluto goes through the sign, it brings the karmic cycles back to mankind. It does it individually and it does it globally. So for 20 years it sits in one sign, and then it shifts and goes into another sign. And the children born under that sign tend to live that expression. We're talking about how the children born today are born under the sign of Scorpio, and they will be for the next 20 years. So 20 years from now, there'll be teenagers and 20-year-olds, and their influence will really start to impact the world. And Scorpios don't want a world that doesn't work. So they're going to be 20 years from now. I would not be surprised if the kids of that world would really do whatever it took to stand up for what they feel is right and fair for all humankind. The kids that are 20 today are all about fairness, about honesty, about justice. And so you see a lot of protesters about, what's not fair. Well, the Scorpio generation will be taking action to make things actively different. So anyways, that's just, the influence of Scorpio. It's planetary and it's generational. And for your own life, it's like, where you represent the raw influential power of your life. Okay? So there are 12 houses. Now, I'm not trying to confuse you guys. I'm just trying to give you a basic understanding. And if you have this basic understanding, you can be able to look at your chart and say, oh, I have this nature. Oh, I have this nature. Oh, I have this nature. And by having those natures, you can recognize what your strengths are and then also how to apply them in the physical world. So there are 12 houses. Each house represents the 12 areas of life. Marcy wanted to make an example. Sun in Aquarius in the 7th house. So that would be the sun would be, how you shine in the world in the sign of Aquarius, which is like the friends of everything, in the 7th house. And so that would be how the sun would influence your life, and that's the 7th house. And the 7th house is actually about romantic relationships. So that means if you have Sun in Aquarius in the 7th house, that kind of person would be very strong and independent in their personal relationships, and they would also be warm and welcoming to many friends within their relationships. So, and they may also have a very unique type of relationship as well. So cool. So the first house has to do with physical body, your physical appearance, and your general health. General health issues, that kind of stuff, susceptibilities to diseases, that kind of stuff. Second house is all about work. It's about work, it's about money, it's about finances. It's like what you will do for a living, but also what, the amount you will create. It's about exchanging your services into the world for energy returning back toward you. The third house is siblings, but also short travel. And when I say short travel, it means like vacations or short business trips, that kind of stuff. If you have a lot of energy in the third house, you probably do a lot of short traveling. Okay. Fourth house is often referred to as the house of the mother. This is not always accurate. It's actually the house of the parent that has the least influence in the person's life. So, for example, if you're a child and your mother died at birth, and so you really didn't get to know her, then your father would be the parent that had the greatest influence. So in this case, the fourth house would represent your mother. But if your father died at birth and your mother was alive, then this house would represent your father. So when I say it represents that, it refers to your relationship with him, how you got along with him, how they influenced you, how they didn't influence you, how you interacted, and that kind of stuff. So it also deals, in later life, it deals with material things of life, like homes and land owning and that kind of stuff. Okay? Fifth house is, this is often referred to the house of children, play, and gamblers. It is about love. It's about an innocent, playful type of love. It's not the romantic type of love. It is education. It is special skills and talents, like athletes, but it's also for like investors or stock traders, because it's about like gambling. So, or business transactions. So you ever hear the term lucky in love, unlucky in business? Or the fifth house actually is about lucky in life, playfulness, and business, and that kind of stuff. Romantic love is actually the 7th house. So and these houses actually support each other. So planets in both houses. So most people have a strong 5th house, can also have a strong 7th house. So that means they're lucky in love and life. And okay, 6th house is service. It is what you're giving to the world. It is how you give back to the world. Someone with a very, very strong 6th house would spend their entire life helping other people because that's what they came here to do. Someone with a weak 6th house wouldn't be focused on service to others. They'd be focused on something else, whatever house has the strongest influence. So, but also 6th house is overall general health. I said the 1st house is physical body and health, but 6th house is actually also, because it's the house of service, it's also the house of healing. So it's how you recover from illnesses, but it's also how you maintain your overall health as well. Okay? 7th house, like I said, was marriage, relationships. It's also about spirituality, but not in the sense of, oh, I'm sorry, I'm misreading. It's, yeah, marriage. Oh, that's what I meant. That's what I was thinking about. It's about benefactors. It's about people who love you and care about you and support you. Okay? So it's also rivals. If there's a negative thing in your 7th house, they also can create rivals. 8th house. The 8th house is known as the house of death, the house of Pluto, death and rebirth. So it's also, but it's also because death creates inheritances. It's also known as the house of legacies, but it's also the house of occult knowledge. Someone who has a strong 8th house may work in hospice, for example. Doesn't mean that you die a lot and come back to life a lot. It means that you tend to have a life where you're around the process of death in one form or another. It could also mean that you may have a large family and you tend to outlive them all because they all pass away. So you're familiar with the death process. Most people just work in hospice or in an environment where they deal with that. It could be an EMT or a fireman or even a doctor dealing with, you know, terminal patients. So it's but occult abilities as well. 8th house is psychic abilities in the sense of strong intuitive properties, like being the gut feeling, kind of like the Scorpio, where you just have a strong sense of recognizing if you can trust this person or not trust this person, or recognizing that there's something between you to work out. So it's pretty cool for that. Some people with a strong 8th house will be attracted to occult knowledge. If their 8th house is negatively affected, they'll be drawn to shadow side or dark side, and if it's positively affected, then it's on beneficial side. So, for example, a lot of people with a strong 8th house that may have a negative aspect to it are drawn to goth, even though they're not doing anything negative. They're just drawn to the spooky, scary, dark side. Okay. 9th house is about religion and spirituality. It's also the house of travel, long distance travel. This is where you may travel abroad, live in another country for a period of time, and then come back. So someone who has like a strong 9th house influence may, for a period of time, travel abroad for school, travel abroad for work, but then come back home. So it's not a permanent shift. Okay? It's also considered to be the house of clairvoyance, so where people are more visual. 10th house is known as the house of fame and fortune. It is the most influential for recognizing how people are seeing you. So someone with a strong 10th house is usually very famous. They become a celebrity or they become influential in the world at large. It's also the house of the most influential parent and how you interact with them. So a lot of people want to, you know, when they go to an astrologer, if they know anything about astrology, they're like, well, tell me about my 2nd house, tell me about my 7th house, tell me about my 10th house, because that's what they want to know, because it's about work and money, relationships with the second house, which is the 2nd house, relationships with the 7th house, and fame and fortune, which is the 10th house. And that's most people's primary interest, but really all the houses come together and play and influence your life. The 11th house is where you have the people that benefit your life. It is in feng shui what we call useful friends or useful people or beneficial people. It's where you have lifelong friends and companions, people that will always be at your back and always be at your support. And it tells how you gather them and how you maintain them. 12th house is working outside the mainstream. A lot of people with a strong 12th house, actually I have a strong 12th house, work outside the mainstream, meaning they do jobs that the mainstream public doesn't really recognize or understand or normally do. So, I thought about being a lawyer for a while. I thought about being an actual doctor for a while. I thought about being a pilot, and really considered all of these, but none of them felt like they were me. And the work that I do now, which is spiritual teaching, spiritual coaching, especially when I get into Hermetics and Kabbalah, is so far off the beaten path. Even though a lot of people know about Kabbalah now, still it's not considered to be mainstream knowledge. It's not taught in colleges or in high school. So it's kind of, way off the side there. And the cool thing is that most people with a strong 12th house are the kinds that help the people that most people don't want to help. So, for example, the insane asylums, even hospice, of course, like the people who are starving in India or Africa, people with strong 12th house are doing the social work that benefits all humankind. Another aspect of the 12th house is possible imprisonment or incarceration or isolation. So if you're doing work that's isolating, then this is obviously not mainstream. Prisons doesn't mean you're in jail, although that can happen. It means that you can work for the jail, or you can go to jails and help people there. Same with the insane asylums. Okay, doesn't mean you're going to be crazy, or doesn't mean you're going to be a criminal. You have to understand this is about the energy that you're drawn to, or the influence that's supporting you, not that you're going to be that person. Okay. You benefit from astrology by understanding the depth of your own nature. And it is only by recognizing, as we said earlier, what those idiosyncrasies are that you can overcome them. And when you do, you actually do it by recognizing what your gifts are, which also astrology can teach you. And so by recognizing the gifts that astrology teaches you and recognizing your idiosyncrasies, you actually bring the light to your shadow and you overcome them very quickly. So the more you study your chart, the more you study you, the faster you evolve. You evolve through your knowledge, you evolve through your awareness, and you evolve through your own personal empowerment. And that's what's really cool. That's what I learned from studying astrology, and that's how I started to grow. First you study your own chart, and then to really understand astrology, you study other people's charts. And as you learn more and more aspects and more and more differences, different aspects and different influences, you really gain an understanding on human nature, and that's what's really powerful. Okay. Also, there's many types of charts. The birth chart is the standard chart that everyone looks at when they first get into astrology, because it explains you at the moment of birth. But the cool thing is that the next day, your chart for who you really are is slowly starting to change. It's called your progress chart. So your natal chart and your progress chart are the first two charts to get. Your progress chart is who you are today, meaning the influences that the stars are bringing about you today. There's actually many different charts, and to give you layers and layers and layers of information, and it can get so complicated it can be rather deep. So the progress chart is where you are today, and the progress chart is also known as the year's progression, and that's like where you are today and the influence that's coming to you over the next 12 months or more. So you can be aware of the energy that's coming into your life, and then forewarned is forearmed. You can take actions appropriately, or when it comes in, you can recognize that energy and choose to sidestep it. There are many other charts like astrocartography, which helps you to identify where the best place to live and work is. And then there's also synastry charts or relationship charts, which help you to understand how you compare to this other person in a relationship. Now, I know when I first started studying astrology, I used these charts a lot. And I got to tell you, I had a relationship chart that was amazing, and the relationship was a struggle. So these are only influences. They're not written in stone. They are influences. There are no guarantees. What is guaranteed is that if you take action, you're going to get consequence from your action. So be forewarned and forearmed. And then take actions that are appropriate. Okay? Now, to get your chart, all you need your birth date, the time of birth, and the location of birth. And if you have that, you can get your chart printed or made up. There are plenty of free websites online. You can get all this stuff for free. A lot of these charts are good. They're basic information. If you want something more in depth, you can go to an astrologer. They usually have really in-depth programs. Like I have like a $2,000 program for astrology. It goes into deep detail explaining the influences. And then, you know, if you have an astrologer that can actually read those charts for you and explain those influences, that's even better. So my recommendation is to study astrology as much as you can because it will change your life. Okay? Now, we go right into numerology. We're kind of running out of time, so I'm going to go a little bit faster, but we're going to leave a little homework. And if we go long, I hope that's okay. They still have the recording. I'm not going to go so fast that I blow you out, hopefully. Now, so astrology comes down from understanding, astrology is another aspect of something called esoteric science. And another part of this esoteric science is called numerology. So in the beginning, there are three rays: letters, numbers, and sound. Letters are known as sigils or shapes, and they gather rays of creation and harness this energy. Numbers is about dimension or frequency or density. And sound combines the letters and numbers into cohesion, creating physical form. That's what's really cool about letters, numbers, and sound. These are considered the three primal rays of creation. The more you understand this, the more you understand the importance of understanding your name and numbers, numerology. Okay? So numerology is a study of numbers. It's began with Pythagoras, which is pretty cool. So it's actually, you know, older than I am, only by a couple of years. You know, so 581 BC. Pretty cool, huh? Numbers have influence. So he found the relationship and started teaching it. He also believed he brought forth geometry to the world. Okay. Types. Marcy says no, but that's just. I know he studied geometry, but I think he advanced geometry, Pythagoras theorems. Okay. So there are types of numerology. Just so you know, you can calculate your name or numbers. You can calculate numbers, and the numbers tell you certain things. There's something called a destiny number, which is like your path in life, what you're destined to utilize in your life and become energetically. That doesn't mean you're destined to be a policeman or you're destined to be a doctor. It means you're destined to have this quality of this number that this number represents in your life. More and more and more. It's like having your sun sign. That's what you're destined to express in this world. Okay, that's what you came here to do, and that's what you're doing. Then there's a personality number, which is actually shows how you respond and interact with things. And then there's something called the soul number. Now, the soul number or the divine number is where your greatest gifts and your greatest strengths come from. And I don't have time to address all of them, so I'm going to choose to address the one that gives you the greatest benefit. So let's address soul numbers. And by the way, you can find this other stuff in several books. It's really easy to find, but the soul number stuff is not that easy to find. So that's why I'm addressing that. Okay? So soul numbers. To calculate your soul number, you have to have, if you can't do it right now, that's fine. But you're going to have this information, and you can do it at your own convenience. And we're going to give you a handout that shows you how to do this. In order to calculate this, you have to have your full name, your date of birth, which includes the time and the year. So your full name, that's your name at birth, date of birth, and time and year. Now, your soul number actually changes if you change your name. So so you can calculate it for your current name if you want, because that's the influence that you are currently under. And then for fun, you can calculate if you have a previous name or a different name, or you went by a different name or had a name change. You can calculate the previous name and see that's the influence that was there before. And I think it's easy for most people to recognize how, yes, that was their expression or that was their nature, and now they're really focusing on this in their life. Okay? So, soul numbers. I'm going to give you the explanation of the souls and what soul number and what it represents, and then we'll give you the process of how to do it. So if you have a number 1, this is about discernment. This is about being aware of what actions to take. It's almost like being psychic. It's like I know what I'm supposed to do next, or I'm aware of I'm at a crossroads, and it's easy for me to determine what my next choice should be based upon the information in hand. Number 2 is initiative, and very good at setting goals, very good at taking direction, very good at focus and power, directing personal power. Number 3 is about being a patient and disciplined person. Number 4 has great loyalty. They're able to commit and go the long distance on any project or any endeavor that they engage themselves into. Number 5 is good at critical judgment. They tend to be very bold and confident. If you have a soul number of 6, you will be very compassionate by nature. You'll be a natural nurturer and a peacemaker. Okay? Number 7 is very optimistic and also very creative. They also tend to be very spontaneous, and one of the things that I love about number 7, the people who have number 7s, I'm not a number 7, by the way, but one thing I love about people who have number 7 is that they tend to be very outgoing, have a natural outgoing nature. Okay, number 8 is very honest or integritous. And integrity is an important part in their life, and they're also very practical. And then number 9 is the spontaneous, independent individual who also lives from their psychic abilities. So these are the basic influences of the soul and how they influence us. So now let's talk about how to find them. By the way, numerology influences on a personal level, and it influences the world globally. And what I mean by that is we have a global year. Right now it's the year 2013. And this is a count that's recognized by pretty much the entire world. Now, there are other calendars in place and other long counts in place where other people call it different years, but this is the year that's accepted by pretty much most of the world in working with people and in correspondences. So because of that, because of the global acceptance of this number, it has an influence. So this year is a 6 year because 2 plus 0 plus 1 plus 3, 2013, is a 6. And that influence is the influence of creating harmony, creating justice, and creating balance. And that's the energy that is impacting all humankind on the planet. Because we agreed to this, that's the influence. So what you're seeing in the world right now is how the world is trying to be more harmonious, more just, more living more balanced as an individual, but also as a planet. So if you notice, because that's the influence, wherever we have resistance to this influence, that's what explodes into the world. So what you're seeing in the world is where we're not having harmony, where injustices are, and where there's inequality or unfairness or imbalance in relationships and in life. And it's interesting because it's exposing, I think this year there's been more exposing of corruption and in the West than any other time in recent years. And actually a greater move or push to clean it up. I'm not saying it's there, but I'm saying there's more recognition of it, and that may be because of the internet. But what's really cool is next year is a 7 year. And 7 year is about philosophy. It's about being philosophical. It's about being introspective. It's about being inspirational. And it's about analyzing the depths of things and really gaining an understanding. This is the influence of next year. So where we resist this is where we're going to be pushed as a society to be aware of. So I'm curious as to how being inspirational, how being philosophical, introspective, is, going to really come to play. Because if you take the opposite of this, philosophical, superficial, introspective, analytical, not thinking, philosophical and mental are two different things. Also maybe emotional. I think is more the opposite of philosophical. And then inspirational versus non-inspirational. And so it's interesting to see what happens next year, because we could have all of this if we embrace it. We could have a world that is inspirational and introspective and supportive in an altruistic way. Okay? So that's the influence in play. Now, since everything has a vibration, your name, your personal name, has a meaning and a depth, and that's that soul number we're going to calculate. So changing your name changes your frequency, changes the influence. So because the influence has changed, you naturally are pushed to act differently. And that's not a good or bad thing. That's just the energy in play. That's the frequency in play. Okay? So what does your name mean? You can find many, many books to read and find out what your names are. There's a history of books that talk about the names and what they represent. My name John represents the beloved of God, which means I'm always trying to do things to be good, or to be kind, or to be loving, or to be loved. It's interesting because because I have a Japanese name too that I was given at birth, and my Japanese name is Choho. And it took a long time, a lot of research, and because everyone I've talked to said it's a unique name, it doesn't really exist, no one's ever heard of it in Japan. But then I found out it's not a Japanese name, it's actually a unique dialect of the Hogan, called Hogan, which is Okinawan. And Choho, I found, the only record I found of Choho is in the history books, is the name Choho is the name of a great warrior. So the name Choho has the influence of the name of someone who's a very assertive and very confident, a warrior like nature. Pretty cool. Maybe someday I'll be a warrior. Who knows? Never can tell. Okay, so steady your name, steady the influence, and so that way you know what it means to you in life, and you can recognize your expression of it. And when you're not expressing it, you'll also be aware of this too. Knowing your frequency, knowing your name, knowing the influence really strengthens these gifts in your life. And by strengthening that gift, then it can really empower you to change and become the person you want to be. Were we going to go over the numerology? It's in the handout. Okay, the numerology to explain your soul number, I thought I was going to go over that, but it's in your handout. But I will cover it very quickly, and it's really simple. It's not that complicated. You just need to be patient with yourself when doing it. Okay, so astrology is a lifetime pursuit. Some of the greatest astrologers believe that if you were to understand everything about astrology, then you would understand everything about everything there is to know. You would know the time of any earthquake before it happened, any storm before it happened, any death before it happened, any birth before it happened. The more you understood astrology, the more you understand the fullness of the creational energies in play. And so that's actually what the greatest astrologers believed. A cursory understanding will help you have a great awareness of who you are and your influences, and can become highly beneficial. A deeper understanding helps you to understand people and how they are and their strengths. And I think that's pretty powerful, because if you understand a person's basic nature, you know how to work with them in negotiations or in relationships. The cool thing about astrology is that it is an influence. It is an influence. It doesn't stop you from making decisions. You're not a prisoner. You're not trapped to astrology. You're not doomed to act like this way or the other way. It's just that's the influence that you chose to be when you were born. Now, I want to make this clear. You did not make the stars come into alignment and then you were born. You chose to be born at the exact moment in time you chose to be born, and the stars reflect that. You chose that moment, not you made everything happen. So you're not a victim to the stars. The stars simply express how you are at the core of your being at the moment of birth, your thoughts, your beliefs, your fears, your hopes, and then from that moment on, we evolve. We're always evolving, becoming more empowered and more powerful, more compassionate, more enlightened, more knowledgeable, more caring, and more influential in all aspects of our life. And so astrology helps us to recognize where we're not holding the influences that we want and how to gain that. So it shows us where the influences is. It doesn't guarantee an outcome. We're not a victim to astrology. So for example, we have our Mercury retrograde coming up. It's a great time for creativity. However, it's a bad time to start something new. Now, if you're born with a Mercury retrograde, it's a great time to start something new because you came in under that influence. But if you're not born under a Mercury retrograde, it's the worst time to start something new. So it's because it's like apples and apples. So when you're born under Mercury retrograde, when the Mercury retrograde cycle appears, it's a great time for you. And so for everyone else, it's a time to continue the course that we've already done and not start anything new, but also be aware of cycles because Mercury goes into retrograde 4 times a year or 3 times a year, so it creates cycles. Okay? So finally, the purpose of astrology and numerology and all things spiritual is to recognize who you are. And by recognizing who you are, you really recognize your gifts, your talents, your strengths. And by that, you can overcome any shadow. And that's what's cool about humans. We have the ability to overcome and spurn the vices of our bodies unlike any other being in existence. And because of that, we change so quickly that we don't have to hold on to old patterns. In this way, we actually change our stars. That was actually one of my favorite lines from an old Heath Ledger movie, A Knight's Tale. You know, Daddy, can we change our stars? And I, son, we can. We can change our stars. And so that's what he did in the movie. He changed his stars. He changed his destiny. He changed from what he was born from and became who he was by his own choice. And that's what we can do. We can have any influence on our chart of birth, but through our actions, through our awareness, we can become whoever we choose to be. And that's what's cool about us. So I hope this has been beneficial. I want to go over the numerology aspects just a little bit. It's pretty simple. The homework or the handout will actually explain it quite easily, quite well as well. You have the alphabet, A through Z, and you have the numbers 1 through 9. So numerology is 1 through 9. So you simply create a chart, 1 through 9, and then you write A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, I, which ends at 9, and then you start back at number 1 again and go J, K, L, M, and repeat that cycle so that you end up with 3 rows of letters and numbers. So that you only are numbering the alphabet 1 through 9 and repeating that 1 through 9, 1 through 9. And then you figure out your name, and then you add the number assigned to the letter together until you total up all the numbers and letters of your name. So like John, John, would have 4 numbers. And I don't remember this off the top of my head, but I believe when I add up all the letters of John, Joseph, Evans, it comes out to be a 5. Because I believe that's what it comes out to be. I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I did my chart. So there's a letter for J, there's a letter for O, a letter for H, and a letter for N, and there's a corresponding number. And so I'll add all 4 of those numbers up. And then if that created a 2-digit number like 15, I would add 1 plus 5, and that would give me a 6. So I keep adding the numbers until I get a single digit. I do that for my name, first name, middle name, last name. I do that for the month and date and year I was born. So March is the 3rd month I was in. So I wouldn't do March. I would do the number 3 because it's the 3rd month of the year. So March and my birth date and then the year, and I would just total all those up. And then the time of birth on a 24-hour clock. So I don't do AM, PM. I do it on a 24-hour clock, which means if I'm born after 1 p.m., I would have to add 12. So 1 p.m. becomes 1300. 12 p.m. or 11:59 p.m. becomes 23:59. So all that will be on the handout that's sent to you. And then once you calculate all that up, you will have your soul number. And with your soul number, you can see the influence that's in your life. So please feel free to do that. And it's, it's cool information. Share with your friends. I don't have any numerology or astrology books because it's been so long since I bought these books. I don't know if they're still on the market to recommend. But I know there's new books coming out all the time. What I would say is get at least 3 different books if you're going to study them, because it's better to be well-rounded than it is to just assume one person's information is the totality of the information. Actually, when I studied astrology, I read like 7 different books, and it made all the difference. And some of the books I read was like, oh, this guy is so harsh in his definitions. It was like painful to read. He is the guy that said I was extremely argumentative and unwilling to listen to my opponent, and that made me really think, well, I'm not that argumentative. But he got me to really take a look at it. So, all right. I hope this has been beneficial. I'll take any questions that you guys might have. Feel free to ask. Any questions at all? Any questions at all? I see there's a few questions here. Give me a second to pull it up. How do you find out the number of your house? Actually, you have all 12 houses in your chart. That's a great question. It's difficult to understand this on this quick seminar, but when you get your wheel, when you get your astrological birth chart, known as your wheel or birth wheel, birth chart, it will show 12. It will show a circle divided into 12 sections, and those 12 sections represents your houses. And you have all 12 houses in your life. And so what the houses do is the planets fall into the houses. And so that's how you know that planet in that sign falling into that house, which is how it influences you in your life. So, for example, I think we gave the example of Sun in Aquarius in the 7th house. You actually have all 12 houses. So wherever your planets are determines that influence. And then whatever planet has the most influence is the planet that's interacting with more planets than anything else. And that's when you go into aspects, and that becomes very, very in depth. And so the first thing to do is to get your chart and get your report, and then read it, and then if you want an explanation of it, get that, and then start reading books on your own understanding. By the way, some of the most psychic people I know are astrologers, just off the side there. Because astrology, because you start to figure out who you are, and you start to get over the stuff that's influencing you in a negative way that you're not aware, you tend to be more aware of influences. And being psychic, is having information about an individual that the person doesn't know you have, and they don't know how you got it. I mean, some people call it being a mentalist. But psychic is just recognizing information, recognizing stuff. So when a person is very, very psychic, they tend to recognize a lot of things. Okay? And June says she doesn't have any questions. Wow, that's okay. Thank you, June. Next question. How do I know which is our first house and which is our second house and so on? Your first house is actually always your first house. Your second house is always your second house. However, if you're wondering what is the sign of your first house and what is the sign of your second house and that kind of stuff, that's actually done by calculating out a chart. And the only way to determine that is by knowing your time of birth. So there are astrologers who can calculate your time of birth by looking at major events that have gone on in your life. Actually, I have not studied that part of astrology. But I'm sorry? You can't get that answer that question. So in order to determine like what your ascendant is and then what signs are in all your house, you have to find an astrologer, and I forget what it's called. I apologize. But you have to find an astrologer that can calculate your time of birth based upon significant life events like death of family members or marriages or divorces or birth of children, that kind of stuff. So if you have that information, they can usually triangulate based upon Saturnian events and lunar influences. So they usually need 3 or 4 pieces of information and they can calculate it out. And they tend to be fairly accurate. Okay. The easiest way is to just get your birth certificate, and your birth certificate will have your time on it. And when you have your time, you can print out a chart, and it will actually automatically tell you what your ascendant is. Okay, and then when you know what your ascendant is, you know what signs on all their houses. Okay. Cool. All right. Any other questions? Any questions? Questions going once? Hello? Questions going twice? And 3 times? All right. Well, I appreciate all of you guys being on. It's been fun sharing astrology with you. It's been a study of mine for 20 years, but I quit focusing on it about 10 years ago. Got really heavy into Kabbalah and Hermetics. But it has literally changed my life. It opened the door for everything else. So I highly encourage it. The more you know about yourself, the more cool you find out you really are. And I think that's what's awesome about it. Hope you guys have a great night. God bless and take care. We will be sending the handout that explains the numerology to you in a few minutes. God bless. Bye-bye.